Our Bikeside topic today is goal setting, and just want to introduce some of the concepts around goal setting that we think about at TaG, and the range of things that we're potentially considering for you to take on a challenge or a goal, or how to set up what you're thinking of for the upcoming season, your upcoming off season, which kind of defines your upcoming season, right? So I like to think of it as there's three sort of identities that we might give some of these goals when we're putting together our challenge or we're putting together our season. And the first one, and this can be relatable to just the type of person you are or the level you're at in your cycling, just what you like to do, a number of elements. So you'll recognize yourself, I think, when I talk about, I've narrowed it down to three. I'm sure there are some more, but I think these are some of the important ones. So the first one is, it might be defined by just getting through a thing, right? And when I say getting through a thing, I mean anything from riding a point to a distance, a place, up something, through an event, and or perhaps as simple as a longer distance than you've ever ridden, or a higher mountain, or any number of those kinds of things. And the thing about this, and where I say you might recognize yourself, is that these type of goals are very personal and very individual. They are something that you can focus on for yourself, and that you can identify as something that's stimulating for you, but it doesn't rely on even something that's organized for you. It's just something that you go, I wonder if I could do that on my bicycle, as we're talking about cycling. So that's the one type of goal that we might be thinking of. The second one, maybe you're a little bit more advanced, a little bit further along. You know there's something that you can get through, and then you're starting to think about doing it a little bit more quickly, a pace, a rate of speed, a number of days, or something along those lines, right? This is where you might get into more of an organized event. This is where you have confidence, usually, that you can get through it, but now you're starting to look at other ways you can better yourself, or that you can better what you think you should be able to do. Still very individual, very personal, but you may be referring to past attempts at something your friends have done, or even just documented times or speeds or something like that as a reference point for putting together your plan. The third is certainly another type of personality, and probably a little bit more competitive, confident in the ability to do something, to get through a distance, or get through a ride, or get through a climb. But now looking at, wow, I wonder if I can set a record against other people, or join in a mass event, place in my age category, be mid-pack. I used to have a favorite thing in racing, where when I was a really, really, really hard race, sometimes I was like, oh, first page result, that's great, right? First page, what does that mean? You're in the top 50 or something. So those are still individual goals, but you're also measuring yourself a little bit against other people and on other people's results. So we can just talk about how you manage that, because you still have to take on your own characteristics of goals within that, but you are also looking at maybe an actual outcome. okay? So an actual outcome being a result, okay? So when we're looking at any of these, there's some really important elements. And I'm going to refer to something that we put together, I guess, a couple years ago. The Everesting Challenge is a really good example, and a really good example of a challenge that we put together to create goals for these three kinds of personalities, three kinds of levels, or however you want to look at it. The Everesting Challenge, you could do the 8,848 meters in a day or 3 days or a week. That part addressed your ability, your level of experience, and your comfort level with something that big and breaking it down. There were people who had goals, so the other end of the spectrum, who had goals to actually set a record. We had 2 people, and actually one person did set a Canadian record in doing the challenge in a day. So that's at that other end of the spectrum, where it's compared to other people, it's compared to past times, it's compared to a racing kind of challenge, as opposed to just getting through something. So identifying who you are and what you want to do is an important first part of this puzzle. Now, once you have an idea of what you'd like to do, talk to people. That's another thing, because talking to people, there's lots of incredible things out there now, and there's lots of organized events and not organized events. Things like, the gravel world has really opened up the concept of, can I ride from here to here, and what's that going to look like? So there's lots of things that you can address or approach and be a part of, that you might be creating the structure yourself or with your friends. So these are the sorts of things to look at. Once you set a goal, one of the things I will recommend is that you seek out someone who's previously attempted it, has some information on how to do it, and just some past experience. That's always going to be really valuable. Many years ago, I took on the challenge partly because I wasn't sure I could do it. I mean, I'd done lots of other things, but I took on the challenge of a 24-hour solo event. And I sought out quite a few people who had done it before to get their take on what I should consider that maybe from the things I had done before I didn't have experience with. So even though I was an experienced cyclist and had lots behind me, I needed someone that had taken on that type of challenge and the characteristics of that type of challenge that I might not have thought about. So seek out someone, recon, and that can be now. I mean, there's so much that you can do online. There's so much that you can do with bike technology or with analysis technology to look at what that goal might look like for you, right? So recon the background if it's something that's further afield. I spend lots of time with people now who have big challenges. There's no way they can actually get through the terrain prior to taking on their challenge, but from Zwift riding a virtual course to looking through other people's Strava results or rides, to just talking about people, watching videos. It's amazing how familiar you can make yourself with some of these things without even being there. So that's huge. And I know that we looked at someone was thinking of taking on riding the Continental Divide, which is massive, massive undertaking. Lots of videos, lots of personal recollections of what that's looked like and how to take it on. And then once you've set a goal, or you're setting a goal, then we want to look at the plan for and the process for taking that on. I referred to talking to somebody or a number of people about the 24 hours solo. And there's a number of elements. Now, when you're taking on something that has days and hours involved, you're going to be spending a lot of time planning, not just your physical training and not just your mental preparation, but also your bike, like preparing your bike, your nutrition, your clothing, your support team, maybe, if it's a longer event. And then ultimately even your recovery and what that's going to look like. And that's going to be based on, particularly if you're doing something that's multiple days or has a requirement for a continuation. Tracy's giving me a thing. But basically you want to think about all these elements in your planning. So the going into your off season, thinking about what you're going to do, really important to break it up into these parts, what you like to do, what's going to stimulate you, what is going to be a challenge for you, what is going to be a next step. And when we talk about that goal of comparing yourself to a certain degree, and that's where you're trying to break a time or place in a category or make the front page, is that realistic? And how do you approach that? And if you do that as well, it's important to have other goals along the way that are going to be able to be ticked off and are going to give you positive reinforcement as you are trying to achieve that result. Because sometimes, well, always, you can't control what other people are doing. So if you say, well, I'm going to win my category in this fondo or on this climb, great, you know, that's a good goal, but you also need to have something that's going to be a real measure of what you personally can do. So that might be a pace, that might be a better than last time you did it, that might be any number of things. So set a goal, recon, plan, and put together something that's realistic for you, that's going to give you some satisfaction, but also a challenge, and get after the training.